Thank you, Anne-Marie, for the opportunity to speak to you this afternoon. I'm Ajit Srivastav, and I'll be speaking to you about this new exciting opportunity that we have at Michigan State University to address some of the global challenges that Jim has pointed out. But before I go into my presentation, let me give you a little bit of a background. You've all heard of USAID. USAID is the Agency for International Development, and they spend nearly $2 billion a year helping particularly developing country come up to speed. And it was interesting, Jim mentioned that 300 million more people will be added to middle class. That's your consumers. Since I was born and raised in India, India is adding 60 million people every 10 years to middle class, and out of a 1.2 billion people. So world class is, and the population is growing, but at the same time their buying power is growing, which opens up the markets. Anyway, USAID has a new initiative which is called Higher Education Solutions Network. And what that means is that they have been in this international aid work arena for about 60 years. And they've been doing things in certain ways, but under the new administrator, Dr. Rajiv Shah, they have this idea of actually engaging the broader academic community across the country, actually across the world, to address some of the complex, wicked problems of international development through science, technology, and innovation. So they said, how do we do that? I mean, their normal operating procedure has been you identify a problem, you issue a what we call RFA, request for proposals or applications. They select a few, they fund it, and you go address the problem. After that, then you have a new problem. So the idea was, if we have a new way of engaging bright minds, we could have a longer impact on our capacity to address global and development needs. So this Higher Education Solutions Network that was conceived, and they issued a call for proposals for universities to apply, and we were one of the universities that applied. And there were 470 concept notes that were submitted, out of which they selected 48 to submit full proposals. Clearly, we were one of them. And from 48, they selected 18 to do a final screening. Of course, we were one of them. And they selected 7 universities to fund. And we are one of those 7 universities. The total funding of the Higher Education Solutions Network is in the neighborhood of $125 million. Our funding is slightly under $25 million for 5 years. So that's sort of the background. And so our proposal is to create a global center for food systems innovation. And we are now a partner with USAID, along with the other 6 universities that are in the Higher Education Solutions Network, to work with them to address a variety of development issues. Ours is the only one that is addressing food. Other universities, as you will see, are addressing different areas. So with that, I serve as a co-director along with Professor Ritu Mabakela. She's a professor in College of Education, and 2 of us are directing the center. The other universities are, you might recognize those names, of course, Michigan State University, MIT, College of William and Mary, Duke, University of California, Berkeley, Texas A&M, and McCready University. Actually, when I saw this list, it sort of confused me because you would have thought Ohio State, Penn State, UC Davis. Only 2 land-grant universities, ag universities, are in the group. So they are really reaching out beyond normal suspects, which is land-grant ag colleges, and they're casting a broader net, including some of the very high-ranked universities in their own field. So this is a very exclusive group. This is a group that If we do it right, we'll continue to be the partners with USAID in guiding their future activities. So what is our goal for MSU here? Our goal is to create and test the scalable solutions and evidence-based approaches to define a set of critical food system trends. So I'm going to talk about what those trends are as we go. And actually, Jim has mentioned some of these trends already. He talked about climate change, talked about population growth, and a few other trends that we'll address would be urbanization and how the global food system should change or transform itself in response to those trends. There are 4 sub-objectives within these goals. First is to identify, define, and assess responses to critical food system trends. And I mentioned some of those, and I'll go into those a little bit more detail later. Provide decision support and analytics to promote and support evidence-based food system policies and investments. In other words, we have to have real hard data. And Jim gave you lots of data. I mean, those are critical things. If the yields are dropping, we need to know why. How the acreages under certain crops are increasing or decreasing, we need to know why and where that is happening, except our field is global. Global in the sense not all over the world. USAID has identified 19 countries that they think are at risk of not being able to feed themselves by the year 2050. That's when the population will grow to be about 9 billion people if interventions are not put in place. And those countries are called Feed the Future countries. Some of them are in Central America, some in the Western African region, some Eastern, Southern Africa, and some are in Southeast Asia. So our focus is on those regions where Feed the Future countries reside. The simple definition of Feed the Future country is the per capita income is less than $1.5 per day. Then the third piece, which is very exciting, is that accelerating the sourcing of development and scalable high-impact innovations in the food system. The concept here is that our team at MSU doesn't have all the answers to global problems. So how can we source that innovation? So out of the $24-some million, about $8 million have been set aside to offer grants, very focused grants to anyone in any institution or organization that wants to address some specific problem that we would identify. So answers may be out there, and there are different categories of those grants, and we will manage those. And also finally to create a multidisciplinary and multi-generational network of food system problem solvers. And this is also Jim talked about. We need people, we need qualified people. A lot of people are leaving ag sector. How do we address that issue? So education, training, workforce development is a major piece of this grant. Okay, so why were we selected? Of course, I don't have to explain to you folks. MSU has a very good track record of 50 plus years of working in the global arena. We are working in 170 countries, and nearly 500 faculty members have some sort of international involvement. This is where we are, actually have active grants and projects, and we have expertise with international partners. Another reason, just as to validate some of the things I've said, these are some of the examples of some ongoing active projects. For example, we recently received a $25 million grant to develop what they call Bean Crisp project. We also have Be Heard project, and these are ongoing projects that we are working on. We are a consortium. MSU is the lead university in the consortium. Other members of the consortium are Wageningen University and Research Center in the Netherlands, TERI, which is the Energy Research Institute in India, in Delhi actually, Sokoine University in Tanzania, and then we are also partnering with 2 private firms for particularly the CRDF would be the agency that will handle all our grant-making activity, the $8 million I talked about, and the QED group is the knowledge-sharing platform. So whatever we develop, we will be sharing widely and openly. Okay, so I'm going to, these are some of the reasons why we selected these universities to work with us, but I won't go into a lot of details of those. But they all bring knowledge in that part of the world. They have experts that we will rely on. And so rather than going through these would be available to you in some ways. If you want to, you can. And but I want to focus on the several megatrends that we envision are going to impact global food system. So the first one, we have lumped several issues here: population growth, climate change, and pressure on land. The next one we have identified is the rapid urbanization and transformation of food system. The projections are that by the year 2050, nearly 70% of the world's population will be living in urban areas. So how do we feed a highly urbanized global population? What changes have to be made in the system? And the last piece is the, I'm sorry, let me just get back a little bit. Oops, there we go. And the last piece is the evolution in skill sets for food system information. Again, it's going to be highly technology-based. ICT is a big part of what we are looking at. Jim talked about precision agriculture, where you have satellite actually guiding you where your combine is, and you apply fertilizer, pesticides on a site-specific basis. Those are all the technologies that will drive and make agriculture system more productive, not only just in Michigan or in the U.S., but globally. It has to. Okay, as I said before, our focus is on Feed the Future countries. There are 3 countries over here: Honduras, Haiti, and Guatemala. Then entire East Coast, pretty much. Tanzania is right around here, but entire East Coast is Feed the Future country. And India is not a Feed the Future country, but most of the Feed the Future countries are located in this region: Cambodia, Burma, Bangladesh, Nepal, and such. Okay, so we are taking a 3-prong approach, which is the first step is to create a globalized multidisciplinary team. We cannot solve this problem sitting here. We have to engage with experts globally. Secondly, we have to have data, information on which to make decisions. So we will be establishing what we call a DSI. This will be a very powerful system which would seek out data, do some very high-level analytics, which will guide some decision making. And finally, we will establish development labs and analytical solutions. And so we will be locating what we call regional innovation hubs in those regions that are of interest to us. And they will play an important part in us doing our job. Okay, the uniqueness is, as opposed to several other projects that we normally have done, is that the knowledge we generate would be available openly to anybody, public sector, private sector, NGOs, or institutions, what have you. Secondly is that there's a huge emphasis on student scholarships and workforce development. So we have now put together a program which is called a Translation Scholars Core. It's basically your knowledge has to be translated in context of global food system. So those are the uniqueness of our project. You put it all together, the ultimate goal is to improve the efficiency and impact of USAID. So we are a partner, and hopefully if we do it right, this is not a 5-year grant, it could be a 25, 50-year partnership, an ongoing lab. So this is a little bit hard to read, but it basically putting all these pieces together, And particularly if you take a look at this piece, this is where we engage private sector particularly. Let me go further. How do we ensure impact? And this is the $8 million program we talk about. The problem we identify or assess are stakeholder driven. So it's not something that we will sit in East Lansing and dream of what the issues are. We will actually engage, we will travel, engage local stakeholders, and identify what those problems are. We'll create solution teams, which will be through competition, and we will deploy and test and scale. And so that's our grant-making process here. But this is of particular importance. Out of the $8 million, there will be several grants. There will be technology innovation grants. And these will be 1 to 2 year short-term round grants, about in the $100,000 range. Then we have a category called technology evaluation grants, and these are in the $250,000 range. And so what that is, that there's a technology that somebody has developed, but they need to evaluate in field, in location. And the last grant type of grant is technology scaling grant. It has been developed, it has been evaluated. Now we need to scale it. To scale, of course, to get this grant, one has to bring funding partners. So there will be some expectations. We haven't quite decided, but we are leaning towards one-to-one match. So this is where a partnership with private industry will play a major role. Total funding is $8 million, and as I said before, it will require some sort of matching funds. Okay, as I said, student engagement is a big part of it. So what are different ways we will engage students? We will offer development internships, which means the students will get paid to travel overseas, engage in a active ongoing research projects or development project as they refer to, and spend 10 weeks of the summer over there. The student innovation grants, so this will be open to the students who are completing their degree in different majors, such as, let's say, in ag economics or agri-food management, food science, agricultural engineering, and such. And they all have to, because these are accredited programs, they have to complete a senior design capstone project. So if the project aligns with our mission, we would fund that project up to $10,000 per group. And so we expect to give quite a few of these every year to engage students, young minds, to solve global problems. We will have experts to come in and talk about development opportunities and challenges. They have conferences and symposiums. And USAID is very, very keen in developing a next generation of development professionals. And because they are running short of those, like everywhere else. So how can we provide that workforce, which is, again, well-trained in science and technology? We are considering developing a specialization, not a major, but a specialization in international development. And those who have interest in international development can opt for it. It may take another semester for them to graduate, but again, through scholarship, that we can offset that cost. And so and this will be open to all majors. And of course, you might or you might not have heard two significant initiatives. BHERD is Borlaug Higher Education Agricultural Research and Development Program, where AID is funding international scholars to come to U.S. universities and engage in research and education. So we will partner with them also. And then the MasterCard Foundation gave MSU this year about $45 million gift. And again, this is to encourage international, particularly African students to come to Michigan State University to engage in higher education. So we'll be partnering with these initiatives and others as well. Direct stakeholders involvement is a key to us. This includes capacity building through agricultural value chain, which will drive knowledge sharing related to food security and resilience to climate change, development of new technology, and process for the food value chain. So when we talk about food system, we are basically talking farm to fork type of thing. Increased involvement of and contribution by women in the food chain. That is a cross-cutting theme, and a high emphasis is given to that. And enhancement of USAID investments by predicting the impact of climate change on crop and livestock production technologies. So again, this goes along with our actually helping USAID in making wise investments globally through data and analytics. What are the impacts on institution and legacy? Of course, greater cooperation among academia, the private sector, and USAID in co-creating solutions to complex global problems. And this is really one of the hallmarks of this grant. The students will help create a highly qualified global workforce to engage with USAID in addressing complex global issues, creation of a global network of problem solvers. And there's a lot of emphasis on network. We are already a part of HASN network. And finally, the decision support informatics, which will be available to everyone, not just the USAID, to address global challenges. So when Anne-Marie asked me to present this, and she gave me the title that we are going to be looking at how we can help Michigan ag industry connect to the world markets or world opportunity. GCFSI is the name of our center, which is Global Center for Food System Innovation, and I thought about it, and actually some of these things pop right out, which I'll share with you. Number one is to develop deeper understanding and be the thought leader on global issues, opportunities, especially in the developing world and emerging market. So this, once we get set up and get our feet wet, this could be a place that we could help Michigan businesses with what the opportunities are globally and based on data. Data analytics and decision support will be available to private sector interested in exploring global markets. So if you want to look at, explore other geographic locations, we will have that information and we can share that with you. Innovation grant, particularly the technology scaling grant, is an opportunity for private sector to get involved in exploring opportunities in the world marketplace. Of course, preparing a well-educated, highly trained workforce to engage in global opportunities, and this workforce is a U.S.-based, Michigan-based workforce. So these are the students at MSU who will then be trained in global food systems. So this becomes a workforce for you to draw upon that is already trained and thinking in terms of global food systems. And finally, the regional innovation hubs that we talked about. There will be 3 hubs located in those regions where the Feed the Future countries are, and they would be sort of our eyes and ears on the ground, and these can also be available to provide you with all sorts of help, assistance, if you want to explore markets in those regions. So with that, I like to thank you for the opportunity, and I guess we'll take questions.